Okay, so in the previous video we add this vertical and horizontal movements for the camera form. So let's see how we can add rotation inputs as well. Initially we have to go to the input mappings, and under the axis mappings now we can add another input event to rotate our camera. So I'll name this as rotate camera X. Right? So we can choose the mouse axis X to handle these sort of mouse movements, rotation related movements. And yeah, the default input scaling can rename it as 1. And let's go to the camera pawn, and under camera pawn let's create another event in another execution pin. And so here we have to add a local rotation, right? Not the local offset like when we are manipulating the location of the camera, because right now when you are rotating the camera, the location remains same, but the relative or local rotation of that specific actor will be changed. So in order to achieve that, we can use this add actor local rotation function that has been provided by the Unreal Engine. And let's connect this pin over here like that. And we can do that by basically consuming our rotate camera axis value. Also we need this exact same camera speed multiplications. So let's add that as well. And now you can see that it output only a float value, and we need to perform this delta rotation within the x-axis. So therefore I can split this struct. So this is the value we need to manipulate, the yaw. So let's plug it out, compile, and let's make a comment, rotate camera X, right? Or you can name it as rotate camera in here, something like that, some sort of a meaningful comment, right? Okay, let's go to the test map and play test again. Okay, now you can see when you are moving your mouse horizontally, it automatically rotate your map as well, right? Actually this is not the exact behavior we want, because otherwise you can't play the game. It's all the time your map will be rotated. And one other thing, this is not actually the map is rotating, this is your camera is rotating. But since we are looking at the relative perspective of the camera, it will feel like we are rotating the map, right? So this is just the relative motion. But actually what happened is that map remains static, but we are rotating our local camera component, right? But it will feel like for us, or for the player, we are rotating the map or rotating the level. But anyway, this is the intended behavior we want. But of course we can further improve this thing, such as we don't need to rotate every time when we are how can I say that, when we are moving the mouse. So we need to restrict this behavior. So we can simply do that by going to the our BP pawn class, and let's create a variable called enable rotate camera, right? Camera. So by default, let's make it as false, and let's drag over here. Let's put a branch, and if we enable the camera rotations, only when it is enabled the camera will be rotated. So if you play test now, you can see even if you move your mouse, it won't rotate your camera. Why? Because this has been initialized as false. But if you make it as true and play test again, now you can see you can rotate your camera. But anyway, we can't manually do this trigger like this, so we need to automatically manipulate this stuff based on the certain conditions. So in order to do that, I will maybe create a new function called toggle rotate camera, and by using this function I will manipulate this variable, right? So where I manipulate this variable, basically it's the player control, right? So as I said before, the player control is the class which is responsible for handling player input related activities or events. So we can use this player controller to manipulate our camera pawn functionalities based on these certain types of input conditions. Okay, so the first thing we need to do, actually we don't need this initial stuff. First thing we need to do is we have to consume that input, which is a specific input for our camera rotation. So I will use another action mapping called camera rotate. Okay, and I will use the middle mouse button as the camera rotation. So whenever you click your middle mouse button and move your mouse vertically, it will rotate the camera, right? That's the condition. So I can use this action over here, and I should have a reference to this camera pawn as well. So I can do that basically maybe creating a new component to handle all of these camera input related stuff which is related to display control. Then I can add display control over here, and I can simply reuse the functionalities that has been encapsulated within that specific component. And I think that is a good approach when you are developing games using Unreal Engine, because it will easier to handle the code base and it will be much more modular. So if you are new to Unreal Engine, please try to follow those sort of design philosophies as well, because those are some of the best practices that we can follow when you are doing game development. So you will see this sort of stuff quite a lot of times when we are progressing through this tutorial series. Yeah, so let's see how we can do that. So I will create a folder called BP components, and inside this BP components I will create a blueprint class, actor component, and I will name this as BP comp RTS game PC, and I can open that out. So nothing is there, but I can go to the default game based play controller and add that component over here. Okay, then inside this BP component, what we can do, we can create another function to toggle rotate our camera, right? So toggle rotate camera, and here I'm simply getting my player pawn, right? So by default, with the game mode, we has been initialized our default pawn as BP camera pawn. So I'm instancing or referring that specific player pawn, and based on that, I can cast to the BP camera pawn. So this is the specific class, and the object is instantiated at the game mode is that specific pawn class, right? So it will be loaded to here, and it will be successfully cast. So once it was been cast, I can get this specific function which has been defined in this camera pawn, right? So I know, like, lot of functions, lot of referencing, you know, in order to do a small thing, we are creating a lot of stuff. So initially you will feel like these are unnecessary, these are, you know, bit long and stuff like that. But later on you will see when the game is getting more and more complex, if we have not followed this sort of a fashion, our code base will be really unmanageable, right? And it won't be readable, it won't be expandable. So that's why I'm always try to follow best practices even from the very initial phases of the game, right? So it will be easier for us to do certain stuff later on. But anyway, we need to manipulate this parameter. So let's drag and drop over here as well. Let's compile and save. So now I can go to the base RTS gameplay controller, and I can refer this specific instance at the player controller level, and I only need to make it refer it is valid, so I will make it as converted to validate get. So if this component is being valid, and if I have been pressed camera rotation, I should be able to toggle rotate camera, right? So it will be true. If not, the camera should not be able to rotate, which is false. So you can see that we are consuming the input in the player controller level, and we are calling functions that has been defined in this BP comp RTS game player controller, which is a blueprint actor component. And inside that actor component, we are manipulating a function, or we are calling a function that has been defined in the BP camera pawn, which is toggle camera. And that function will manipulate its internal variable, which is enable rotate camera. And since this event is calling for each tick, it will listen to this specific variable all the time, and whenever it is true, it will start to rotate, right? And how it will start to rotate? It's based on the vertical input that you are giving from your mouse, right? So that's the entire flow, and yeah, let's try to play test. So you can see initially nothing rotate, but if you click your middle mouse button and slowly start to rotate vertically, you can see the camera rotate. Okay, and once you released your middle mouse button, the camera is not rotating anymore, and it will remain at the positions that you have been stopped pressing the middle mouse button, right? So I think everything is cool, right? We can now rotate, we can move vertically and horizontally. So it feels like a strategy game camera, right? And yeah, um, so that's the entire workflow for camera rotations. So make sure to you have clearly initialized your game mode with this camera pawn as well, otherwise there will be casting issues. And inside your camera pawn, clearly specify what are the necessary functions that you need to manipulate this variable, and you can create a component to organize the camera related or player controller specific activities. And inside your player controller, you can refer that blueprint, actor component, and use the functions, right? Yeah, so I think that's it. And in the next tutorial, maybe let's try to implement zooming mechanisms as well. uh, yeah, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.